Go for it.
Hi, I'm Niki Acosta. I'm the Director of Marketing at Skimmer, and I am joined today by Bruce Sirrine from Beyond Pool Cleaning in Scottsdale and Michael Rodarte of Empire Pool Company, also in the Scottsdale, Phoenix area. Is that right, Michael?
That's correct.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I started in the pool industry probably almost a decade ago. I worked in the financial industry before that and decided I wanted to start my own business. And I had a friend who was a pool guy. And so the two of us got together and I started my pool business. And so it's been 10 years and I've carved out a nice little niche for myself in my area here. And I've been pretty successful.
Excellent. Well, we are super glad to have you. Thanks for joining us. And so today's topic is really about looking at a service plus chems model. This is something that only about 13% of skimmer customers across the nation use, but it definitely has some benefits. And so I'm going to turn it over to Bryce and Michael to talk about this very topic of going from a flat service fee to a service plus chems model.
Yeah, so first let me explain what we're talking about with as far as the plus chems model, how we kind of refer to it. That means that we are not including chemicals with our service at all. Anything that we put into the pool is above and beyond the normal rate. Obviously, you don't have to jump all the way into the full plus chems. You can do things like just charge for your chlorine tablets or, ease into it. But I'll say, going full plus chems has been a totally revolutionary for me. Michael's a friend of mine. We've actually been talking about this. Michael, how long ago did you switch to plus chems?
I switched in January of 2020.
So probably about February of 2020 is when you started harassing everyone, telling them they needed to change over too, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Essentially, once kind of COVID stuff started happening, I realized that it was a good time to try and make some changes and just sort of, I had a few months of it. It worked out well. All my concerns sort of didn't, everything I was worried was going to happen didn't happen. And it's like, oh, okay, well, that wasn't so bad. And so then after I tore the Band-Aid off, it's like, well, let's see if this can help other people,
Yeah. And I think it probably, it took you about 2 years to convince me. I was so scared of how much more work it would be on the back end, honestly, with actually going through and calculating all of that stuff. So I was really hesitant for a long time, but finally made the leap. Found out that I was dumb. It wasn't hard to do, especially if you're already a skimmer user. And then suddenly I'm making tons more money. It's been a total game changer for me. I think I had to call you like a month after I started and thank you, right? It was
yeah, yeah. I mean, it does. It's one of those things that when you like really sit down and, pencil out, even just pick one account, you know what I mean? And just pencil out the numbers and see what the difference would be. It was crazy. And then the first, month where it's like you do all the billing and everything's done, it's like, wow, I'm making a lot more money. And some of the other benefits too are just, I felt like I was treating the pools differently. I was treating them better, kind of the way they needed to be cared for versus the way that I was trying to care for them versus balance my, financials as well.
Yeah, that's a good point to talk about. Like, not only does it affect how how you behave and how you treat the pool, but I have to say it's really affected how my customers behave as well. Now they suddenly care when I say, hey, we need to clean the filter, it's going to reduce your chemical usage, or we need to run the pump more, instead of them fighting you on those extra expenses. Now that they actually see the savings, they care, they listen to your suggestions, which has been really big for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Draining pools was always, we really need to drain your pool. And I understand from both sides of the coin there, from the pool guy standpoint, I don't want to keep throwing more chemicals and losing more money every month into your pool. And from the customer standpoint, it's not costing them any more money. So why would they want to spend money to not save money? You know what I mean? And so once they have to kind of foot that cost and they realize that, yeah, let's drain your water. Let's put fresh water in here. You'll use less chemicals. It'll be a better all around situation. And now that they're sort of, invested in it directly, they're way more willing to make those changes, to do those things or upgrades or whatever it is, if it, will reduce the use of chemicals.
Yeah, absolutely. The draining is a good point. I know not everyone in every market has to do that, just based on if you're draining out half your pool when you're winterizing. But on the Sun Belt, you guys know exactly what we're talking about, having to drain the pool every, 3 to 5 years at the most, and just not having that fight anymore. That I'll look forward to that. I haven't experienced that yet since it's my first time really jumping into the full plus chems, but I'll look forward to that for sure.
Right.
Yeah. So I guess, tell me, when you got started, was Skimmer already set up to make it so easy, or is that something that's kind of changed over time?
No, well, so I've been a really long time Skimmer user, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I actually have a shirt that says Skimmer and it's got the on it. And I called to get a shirt like a year later. I was like, do you guys have any more of these shirts? And he's like, I only had 100 of them made. The first 100 people got a shirt. He's like, and then I'm out. And I was like, oh, okay. So supposedly I'm one of the first 100 Skimmer users. I don't know if that's true or not.
It is. Juan was talking about that recently. I've got one of the shirts too. So
all right, there we go. So so I've been using Skimmer for a long time, and that was part of the reason that I did eventually make the move to plus chems, because that's the biggest thing for pool guys is, how do I account for all of this? How do I know that Mary used 12 tabs this week or this month? And how do I know how much it costs and all of that? And you have to have that information. You have to know that information. It's, and then you got to calculate all of that. And it does seem like just this big daunting task. And unfortunately, that's where usually the idea of plus chem pricing dies. Oh man, I got to do all of this work. And that's the beauty of technology. That's the beauty of Skimmer and QuickBooks and all of these other avenues that we have available to us now that 5 years ago, 10 years ago, we didn't have, is that Skimmer does that for me, right? I mean, yes, I have to go in and put the information in there, but like tonight, today's the first. Oh man, I wish you could see I'm rubbing my hands together. It's my favorite time of the month because I'm going to go and do all of my invoicing. This is when I get paid. It's my payday. And
Right.
So being able to go into the invoicing report, clicking on, Mike Allen's the first guy. Here we go. What is he used 12 tabs. It cost this much. He used this. It did this. It did that. Charge him, $32 or whatever the cost is. It's already done. And so I just go in, I do the invoicing. I'm in and out of there. Now, because of Skimmer, this is a super viable way to run your business, to make more money. And it's not really that much more difficult once you do all the legwork up front.
Can we talk a little bit about that legwork? And on that note, we have a question in the chat from Sam who says,
Sure.
When you moved to plus chems, did you offer a discount on the base monthly price?
Well, so for me, I think Bryce and I differ on this a little bit. For me, I did not. I sort of have a small niche little company. My thing is I'm very personalized. I've only got so many spots. And so I charge a premium for my services. So for me, I did not. I simply just changed to the plus chem pricing. So this, let's say $100, somebody was at $100. I would keep them at the same $100, but now their sort of quote unquote price increase or change was just that I was going to charge them for the chemicals that they use. So I kept the price the same, but changed to the plus chem model. I don't know if Bryce did that or not.
Yeah. So for me, obviously, my business is quite a bit different from yours. We've got about 450 accounts, and I kind of consider it two markets. We have the Scottsdale market and the Surprise market. So what we did for our Scottsdale market, we dropped the rates, $10 to $20 a month, and then we're going to plus chems. And then whereas in the Surprise market, that was the same thing as what you're describing. That was part of our price increase, was going to plus chems. So a couple of very different ways. And I would say that by dropping the rates, we actually had a lot of people who were thanking us, in one respect is, one of my reasons that I say is that we do this is we're trying to make it more fair. Whereas our customers with like the Airbnbs and those properties that are basically pool parties every week, they're affecting everyone's bill, whether you want to admit it or not, because when you do your price increases, you're factoring that in. By taking everyone to the plus chems model, you can kind of make it more fair, where those people who are using the pool all the time and need more chemicals, they pay more. And those people who they just look at their pool, they never jump into it, then they're not necessarily going to have as steep of a price change. But
Did you lose any accounts because of that, Bryce?
yeah, every time you do a price increase, you're going to lose accounts, but it was on par with every other price increase, maybe 1% to 2%. And we are talking about, to answer Sam's next question about a gross increase, absolutely. I'm talking about like a 20 to 30% gross increase for summer. So if I lose 2% of my customers, but I make 30% more money, I would do that every time. So I would keep going with that.
That's a common question that when people talk to me or message me about this concept that I get asked is, did you lose customers? What was the worry about it? And what I always tell people is look at your business and figure out like what's a catastrophic loss, because that's what everybody's always worried about. Am I going to go under? Is everybody going to quit? Oh my God, it's always the worst case scenario. Well, what is that? If you lose 100 customers, is that going to change the way you pay your bills? If you lose 20 customers, is that not going to matter really that much? And when you really start thinking about it in real numbers, a lot of times people, well, I guess if I lost 10 customers, that would not be great, but that would be fine. I could make those up. It's like, okay, do you really think that 10 of your customers are going to leave because of this change? And so when they really think about it that way, it's like, well, probably not. And it's like, well, it's not as scary when you sort of think about it that way, but it is just scary. And there is going to be a little bit of attrition. It's just kind of what happens. But as Bryce said, for the most part, everybody that I've talked to about this, they lose 1, 2, 3, maybe 5 customers. It's never been a number that they were like, this was the wrong decision. I shouldn't have done this. It was always, I thought I was going to lose so many customers, and it was like 3 people. And unfortunately, I don't know, but usually when they tell me that, those are the 3 pools I was hoping to get rid of anyway. So it's like a lot of times it can be a blessing in disguise.
Yeah. Jude's asking, he's like, what kind of markup are you charging on your chems? I don't want to get too specific, I guess, about like pricing strategy, but just kind of like a rough idea, how do you price your chemicals?
Yeah, so essentially what I do is I look at my wholesale costs, whatever I'm buying. So if I go buy a quart of PR 10,000, whatever that costs me, I just divide that by the ounces, and then I put that into Skimmer. This costs me $3 an ounce, $1.50 an ounce, whatever it is. That's my cost. And then I figure out kind of what I want to charge. Now, some people, this is, again, dependent on your business and what you want to do. Some people just they want to get rid of that expense. I just want to break even on the cost of my chems. That's fine if that's what you want to do. Some people want to make a little bit of money on the chem. Well, if it costs me $1, I'll charge $1.50. So again, it kind of depends on what you want to do. Me personally, I have a little bit of a markup on all of my chemicals because I still cost me gas and time to go down there and get it, to know what the chemical is. If that bottle breaks and I got to clean it up and go buy, there's all these things that I still have to do. So I do want to make a little bit of money on them. But essentially the idea, at least at the very minimum, is to just get rid of that expense.
Yeah. And I'd say I kind of feel the same way about it. I'll say, honestly, I like to do a little bit of markup, and just for the same reasons you said, you got to account for waste and for the time and all that you spend actually still getting those chemicals. The rate I like to charge is basically, I like to take a look at how much could my customer go and get this for at a store if they get the best deal that they can. And that's what I like to sell it at. It's usually going to be a slight markup, but it's enough to make it worth my time.
I will generally tell people, just charge what Leslie's retail would charge. If they're charging $300 for a 55-pound bucket and there's 100 tabs in there, charge $3 a tab. That's what they're paying. If they went to go buy it, and you're bringing it to them. So there's a little bit of intrinsic value there where they don't have to go to the store, wait in line, pick up this giant bucket, bring it you're bringing it to them, you're using it, you're dealing with the chemical hazards. So if they pay the same price but don't have to deal with any of the hassle, I feel that works out well for them.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I'm thinking too.
There's been a little bit of a debate too, just about, chemical storage as well. And I'm not sure how, laws or rules or regulations vary from state to state, but do you see that as being a concern for some of your customers who bought their own chems?
For the most part, I haven't. I think this will probably maybe be a regional thing. I know that I'm assuming everybody's in Arizona because I'm in Arizona, but in Arizona, we've got, most of the time the pool equipment is far away from the house, and it's kind of hidden behind a little pony wall area. So it's just sort of like, you know, black hole of stuff. Nobody ever goes over there except for the pool guy. So for the most part, I haven't had any storage issues, other than maybe like if they buy something in a cardboard box or whatnot, that it, you know, the box will get gross. But for the most part, we use them quick enough, and they're somewhat covered that I haven't had any issues. Now I'm assuming if somebody's stockpiling something, that could possibly be an issue, maybe from a pool guy standpoint. I can tell you, I have quite a few buckets of tabs on my side yard at my house, but I will be honest, I don't know of any of the sort of local ramifications of that. That is a good question.
So thinking about, you know, making this change, how do you communicate the price structure change to your customers? Have you been emailing them? Do you pick up the phone and call them?
So this one's a little, again, sort of dependent of the person. Some people don't mind email. Some people like to do it in person. I have a friend of mine, James. He went to everybody's house. He talked to them in person. He let them know. And as you can imagine, his rate of attrition was basically zero. For me, what I did is I like to be proactive. I like to communicate ahead of time. So I knew that I was going to make my change in January of 2020. So at the end of 2019, I was preemptively letting my customers know, hey, everybody, I'm going to be making some changes to my to the way we do things at the company, pricing. And so I sort of let them know ahead of time things were coming. And then in January, I let them know here is exactly what's going to be happening. Basically what I told them was kind of what Bryce alluded to. Here's the thing. Whenever you go into somebody's backyard, when you do the Chems included pricing, pool guys are making a guess. It's an educated guess, hopefully based on, years and years of experience. But the bottom line is you're guessing. I'm guessing that this pool is going to take 5 tabs a week in the dead heat of summer. And so I'm going to base my pricing on that. If I guess wrong, I'm going to lose a bunch of money. If I guess right, really right, then I'm going to be overcharging the customer. And so I don't necessarily like that idea. Nobody really wins in that scenario. And so what I relayed to my customers is kind of exactly what Bryce said, is that everybody's pool uses a different amount of chemicals. And I just want to charge you for the chemicals that your pool uses. I don't want to have to charge you a little bit more because the Airbnb down the street has a party every 4 days. That's not fair. You know what I mean? And so that's basically what I let my customers know, is that I'm doing this so that you only use the chemicals that you need and the chemicals that your pool requires, versus just kind of, what I'm hoping to put in, or I just got to charge your little tiny pool a whole bunch of money because the Airbnb is crazy.
Yeah. And actually that's something that Jacob sent us a message to about. Thanks, Jacob. He's saying specifically that one thing that he noticed was when he went to Plus Chems is that you actually start to see and expose the accounts that you've been losing money on for years. And that's absolutely like a core detail. Obviously with Skimmer, you can view the profit report and you can kind of see those accounts, even if you're not charging Plus Chems. But that doesn't really show you the whole picture when suddenly, some of your customers are having these rates that are $30 to $50 more than what they were used to. And it's because for the longest time you've been supplementing them. So.
And yeah, unfortunately, that's what a lot of it is that a lot of pool guys they'll just put in what's needed, or they'll keep doing it, and they won't realize that was my big realization many years ago before I started this. I actually wussed out 2 seasons and didn't change to Plus Chem pricing because I thought I was going to lose customers. And what really sort of was that tipping point was I had a pool that I just knew that I was putting in just a ton of stuff every week, all the time. And so unfortunately, I went and I did, the report. How does this work? How much am I putting in? What is all my cost? And during the heat of summer, there were like 2 months where it cost me $22 a month to service somebody else's pool. So I'm going to this guy's house. I'm taking all my skill, my knowledge, all this other stuff, and I'm putting in more money into this pool than I'm making out of it. It's costing me $22 a month. And it's like, that's not sustainable. You can't do that as a business owner. There's no way, even if it's 1 or 2 pools, that's just not okay. You know what I mean? And so that's what that realization on that one single pool that I was losing money was the catalyst to this has to change.
Yeah. I mean, I distinctly remember thinking as the summer as our loss leader, it's like, okay, I'm not going to make money in the summer, but come wintertime, I'll make up for it. And that's just not a smart way to run a business in retrospect at all.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many, myself included, I am absolutely guilty. I'll raise my hand as high as I can. I can't tell you how many pool guys I hear, they want to buy a piece of equipment, or they want to go on a vacation, or they want to do something. Well, I make all my money in the wintertime, so that's when I'm going to buy X, or that's when I'm going to go do this. And it's like, it shouldn't be that way. You should be making money year round all the time.
Yeah. Hey, Jude has another question for us. He's asking, what about people questioning or trusting your chemical dosing? Have you ever had issues with people not trusting what you're charging them, or what kind of dosages?
That's a great question. It's a trust issue. That's what it is. I will say, I'll leave it for another conversation, but I think that is a good opportunity to address trust in general with that customer. Do they trust you as a pool professional to be doing your job?
Yeah.
Early on, essentially what you'll probably notice is when you first change is your customers are going to get that sticker shock of, I don't know, again, I'm using round numbers, but it was $100 and now my bill's $125. Why is that? How many tabs did you use? What are you charging me? There's going to be that question. And again, that's another beauty of these apps and Skimmer, is that you can pull up a report and you can show them. And in some cases, if you want to, there's also the option in Skimmer where I believe it'll show them what the chemical readings were, like when you put them in, and then what your dosages were. So if you wanted to, you could put that information in the service reports, or if you don't want to put it in the service reports, if the customer asks for it, you could historically pull that up and provide that to them, or show them, here is what you've used, and this is why, your bill is X amount of for this month.
Yep. And I'd say I do pretty similar things now. We show the customers all the information. We show them the readings, the dosages on those weekly reports. And when people call us with those questions, if they're having trust issues, I take it as a teaching experience. I have no problem teaching my customer why we do what we do, and kind of showing it how it all works. And really that typically tends to make them trust you more. They're like, oh, okay, you do know what you're doing, and you're not just guessing what my pool needs.
And another thing that I do sometimes is, and I'm a little more direct and whatnot, but sometimes I'll sort of restructure. The customer will have a question, and it's a logical question, but I sort of very directly kind of explain it to them. Just say, it's not in my best interest to overcharge you for chemicals. Like if I threw in an extra 3 tabs, I might make an extra 75 cents this month. It's not worth me losing you as a customer to make 75 extra cents. Not only that, but in these times currently, chlorine is hard to come by. You know what I mean? Tabs are either expensive, or, maybe they're not available. And so I'm not going to be throwing extra ones in there trying to make a little bit of money when I probably might be in a time where I may not have any available. So if you sort of explain it to them in a real life scenario, then I think a lot of times they'll understand, and they'll say, oh, you know what? Okay, that makes sense. And it shows them that you do care about their concern, and that this is why I don't do that. It doesn't make sense for me to do this on top of, you got to trust me. I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. And Jude kind of elaborates. He says that he understands, and he likes to, he does feel that sometimes too much information is bad with certain customers. And I understand what you're saying there too, Jude. I've definitely had customers who they like to question everything that you're doing. And that goes back to Michael's original point. If they don't trust you and you can't educate them, they're probably not a good fit. So it's probably time to move on from those customers.
I will say, to Jude's point, one of the things I noticed when I got Skimmer is every so often when new features would roll out, I would turn them on and see kind of how they would go. And the chemical readings one, I had a very quick and an abrupt life with that. I turned it on, and suddenly I had 60 chemists every week asking all sorts of questions and giving me sort of like, this and that. And it was like I spent a lot of time answering emails about chemistry. And then I let that go for a month, and then I turned them off, and suddenly everybody took off their lab coats and went back to just swimming in their pools. And so I can kind of understand where he's coming from. Sometimes a little extra information, can be a little overwhelming. But again, it just depends on how you run your company. So for me, trust is a real big thing, and I converse with my customers a lot, so they don't necessarily need the chemical readings per se. But I could see in Bryce's scenario, where he's got a much bigger company and a much different focus, that's something that would be beneficial to those customers. And so it's a double-edged sword. It's a double-edged sword.
So Bryce, we have a couple of questions in the chat. Sam is asking, says
Sorry,
we
I
use
just answered it.
we use the dosage in the service reports now. Customers love it. You answered the other question. That was his comment.
Yeah, sorry. That was Sam was asking something we talked about kind of early. He was asking if the customers generally accept your recommendations to make changes to minimize the chem use. And that is definitely something when we were talking about earlier, Mike mentioned pool drains, people are much more likely to want to do those. So yeah, it's been really good for me so far. And Michael had some great points and he's been doing it a lot longer.
So Bryce, if you have availability to do this, it would be useful to see your Skimmer dashboard. There may be some folks maybe on the call who have not seen how to actually change to a service plus chems model. And I think you've done a pretty good job. For those of you who haven't seen Bryce demo, he has probably one of the most well-organized dashboards I've ever seen, down to color coding. It's quite impressive.
Yeah, so if I pull up the screen here, this is kind of my demo account. But when I made my change over to Plus Chems, it was a lot harder than it would be for you guys now. Skimmer recently had an awesome update. So if you're on your customer page and you go here to service rates, it's going to pull up all of your customers and their rates and the rate types, all of that stuff. Give it a second to load up here. So here on the rate type is the main thing that we're talking about. If you change your rate type to either per month or per stop plus chemicals, then that means it's going to change it to adding the cost of chemicals onto those. And with this new update, you can actually select everybody and do a bulk update all at once. So now it would only take you a few minutes to make that change. That's the first stage of it. The second one would be going to readings and dosages underneath all of your different dosages for your chlorine tablets, all your chemicals you use, and just making sure that you have a price per unit of measurement, the price per UOM. And whatever number you put in here is going to be what shows up on their invoicing, and then make sure your cost is correct too, so that you can view it on your profit report later. But it really is that easy. And then earlier, Niki, you mentioned, how do we communicate it? Broadcast emails. If you guys haven't used that feature yet, it's definitely a game changer. You can send a nice email to everybody all at once about the price changes. You can even send it to specific tags if you take the time and tag your customers, so that each different person, different rate type or different rate amount, you could tag them with that, and then you can send specific emails to them about what their change is going to be. So, but that's the quick rundown. Like Niki said, we have a much longer video. Plus, in a week or two, we're going to really go into some detail about how to do this, line by line. So, it looks like we got a few other questions jumping in here, though.
So Jude is asking, as of right now, I haven't integrated Skimmer with QuickBooks Online, so my monthly invoicing is completely automated. Does Skimmer have the ability to automatically send invoices? So Jude, that's a great question. And from what I can tell you here is this is the #1 feature request that we have, and we are hard at work. We've got some new engineers who just joined us recently, and this is their primary and sole focus is native invoicing capability. So stay tuned. It's coming. We're working super hard on it. And it is priority #1.
And I would say right now too, you can use the QBO billing integration, which exports all the invoices to QuickBooks. And then we didn't really touch on it. Michael was talking about how quick he can do it right now. I would say I have 450 invoices that we generate every month, and it takes maybe 20 minutes to. And if you know me, I'm going line by line. I'm looking at each one of those invoices, and still it only takes about 20 minutes. So it's definitely well worth going with that integration while we wait for Skimmer to finish up on the big update.
Sam is asking if there's any reason why you can't run a test with billing to see what last month would have looked like with Plus Chems.
So Sam, I think you and I have talked about this in the past about using the export feature. You absolutely could do it by, you know what you could do, Sam, that would be real easy for you is going into the reading and dosages and then just uncheck this box, can include with service. Uncheck that on all of your chemicals, make sure everything else is filled out, and then view your profit report. So you'll be able to really quickly be able to see what you would have made if you were charging for chemicals without having to change any of your other settings. So that should make it real easy for you.
Bryce, before we got on the call, you shared some numbers, and maybe if you don't do it as numbers and maybe instead as percentages, what would you say your profit increase look like from the time that you switched to a service plus chem model?
So I don't know in terms of profit, but in terms of revenue, we went from a monthly invoicing of about 50,000 or so, and now it's closer to 65. So that's about, this last time that we did it was about a 30% increase. That's not exclusively due to the chemical change, but that's the majority. Some of it obviously is new accounts that we've picked up in the last couple months, but the majority of it is going to be the chemical changes.
And to your point, it's not that you're necessarily, profiting more off of customers so much as that you're just charging fairly over the customers that you have, and seasonality factors, and the fact that some people have, insane pool parties and their pools, need a little bit more chem love than some of the other customers.
Yeah, definitely. And, I would say it's not so much that we're trying to get rich as much as we're trying to survive. And I know before we started recording, Jude mentioned having to do several price changes. This is just a great way for you to have those price changes that can happen, kind of as they happen. You can just change your price per unit of measurement, your cost per unit of measurement for your tabs, without having to send out huge emails and letting everyone know that the prices are going to have to change and worrying about who's going to cancel service. It's just a really easy way to make those adjustments on the fly and not have to do, frequent changes.
And Bryce, since you started this, how many times, and maybe this is a question too for Mr. Rodarte, but how many times have you actually gone in and had to increase, let's say, the cost of tabs?
We do it monthly, and we're kind of in the same situation as Michael. We pre-bought a lot of chlorine tablets, so we haven't had to buy at the new prices yet. But if we had to buy at the new prices, it would be changing, almost every 2 weeks almost. So at least once a month, you should get in there and update it.
Fantastic. Any last words from either yourself, or do we still have Michael with us? Is he still there?
Yep. Oh. Yeah, Michael's there. He's just muted right now, I guess. So.
Can you hear me now? Sorry about that.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. One of the things that I wanted to touch on was what Bryce was saying was we're not trying to get rich. A lot of times what happens is with the chems included model, at least in my opinion, I think is that it was more of a convenience factor. And then it's when you're doing the billing and when you're going through the process, if you add $10 a month and then prices go up, and then 6 months later, you add another $10 and you add another $10. The reality is customers are going to get sick of that. You're just at that point, they then feel nickel and dime more so than the chemicals. And I think part of it is when you do the billing is how you do the billing. And this is getting into a little bit more detail, but I think it's important for especially the smaller companies, is that when I break down my billing is I have my cost, right? What they're paying me for, which is service. And again, round numbers, say it's $100. Well, then below that, I have a separate line, which is for chemical use. And so that chemical use, maybe it's $25. Well, now chemicals have gone up. Okay, well, maybe it's $35. It's sort of a mental game where the customers can see that it's like, I'm not raising the price. I'm just raising the price of chemicals is going up and I'm just charging you more for that. That has a much different feel to the customer than another $10. Sorry, I need another $10. And the other downside to those little $10, $15 amounts, again, from the pool guy standpoint is, I'll be honest, I don't know of anybody who's doing that has made any more money. They're just losing a little bit less money. Nobody is sitting down and calculating out, is $10 extra a month going to cover what these price increases are? Is $15 a month, $20? What is that dollar amount? And so essentially they're just assuming, I think I can get away with $10. I think I can get away with $15. And so that's the number they throw out there, regardless of whether that works or not. And so when your bill goes from 100 to 110 to 115 to 140, suddenly that 140 staring them in the face every month is like, that's a lot of money. But when they see that the 100 is the same, but the 20 is the same, and now it's 27, and now it's 30, your fee, your charge is still the same. So it's something that's out of your hands that's going up. And so it's a little bit easier to explain. And I think it sort of makes a little bit more sense to the customers and would possibly help people make that transition easier.
Yeah, that's a great point.
We have one more question from Jude here. He says, how do you guys bid normal pools, the amount of time it takes to clean? It's a good question considering we're talking about pricing.
Yeah, and Jude, I'll tell you right now that going to Plus Chems makes that so much easier, because originally when you're trying to bid, you're like, you're guessing, how much chemical, I think I'm gonna have to use 20 tabs in this pool every month. You know, just such a random guess. But now, and Michael, you're probably pretty similar. You know, I'm basically estimating how much time I'm gonna spend at the pool, and how much of a headache I think it's going to be if they have, you know, really old equipment or anything like that. So basically figuring out my hourly rate and you know, dividing it by 12 for a, you know, for a full year.
Yeah, I mean, that's essentially the same thing I do. Is you've taken sort of the mystery out of it. Now that's what it is. It's just a matter of time. You know, how long am I going to be at this pool? Do I need to go in through a gate? Is the equipment old? Am I going to be here? You know, I had one gentleman, oddly enough, he had 2 pools in his backyard, and I bid him on how much time. I knew a service at his to do both of those was going to be 45 minutes. And that's how I told him. And so it makes it much easier, because am I going to be here for an hour every month? You know, 15 minutes a stop, 20 minutes a stop, 40 minutes a stop, whatever that ends up being. That's how you calculate out what you want to charge them. And then the chemical cost is just on top of that.
Bryce, any other cool tips and tricks around the topic of pricing? And I know one thing that that you absolutely love using is being able to track regular service or things like filter cleans through Skimmer.
Yeah, I think maybe you're talking about like the work orders and the recurring stuff.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. The last thing that we talked about was work orders. I think it was like an hour and a half long class. So there's tons of stuff that we can go over for that. We'll definitely have to send out a link for that. But in terms of when we're talking about pricing, that is something that I've done. I generated a work order that literally shows how I quote a pool that I can share real quick. So if you go under your settings and then you go to your work order types, you can see that I do have one that's a quote for pool service. And then on the right-hand side, you can see just the different things that I want to keep track of: our base pool price, the light, how much like plant debris there is, light, you know, moderate or heavy. If it's a heavy use pool, just different things like that that'll trigger after you swipe it, it'll show an actual dollar amount here. So if our base price was, you know, $100 a stop, and they swiped it, it would say, all right, this is $100, but it's also heavy debris, so we charge an extra $50 for that, something like that. I like to have things like this to ensure that you're consistent, no matter who goes out there. It's one of those things, you know, Michael's the guy who's actually going out. He can easily estimate how much time it's going to take him to clean a pool. But some of my technicians are faster than others, and they might not really be able to do it reasonably. So I have this system to try and help us negotiate that difference.
And while you're there, can you just kind of give us a little bit about your thought process around color coding and what those mean?
Yeah, so when I look at just the work order types, you can see we use the different color coding. basically the different colors kind of toggle on whose responsibility it is to make sure these are done and followed up on. So I have my purple, and in my red ones are like my office manager. You know, the purple would be someone who follows up. That's like my my guy who does. He's like the route supervisor, I'd say. And you know, he does the purple, or I guess the fuchsia and the green. The blue stuff is just real quick for the filter cleans, you know, and just like orange is just jobs that deal with more than one person, things like that. I like to make it real easy, not so much for this page as much as when you're looking at your work orders page, your new and upcoming. It's real easy to run through this real quick and find all the ones that are your responsibility for my different team members.
It's great. And all, you know, all that organization, while it takes time, bottom line is it's going to save you so much time in the future and help you make more money.
Yeah. Michael mentioned that early on too, when he talked about spending a lot more time actually getting things set up initially. But once you've done that, it just makes your work on the back end so much easier and smoother.
Great.
Yeah, like I said, once you get it set up, invoicing used to be such a pain because, you know, it's like I'm not making as much money as I wanted. It was a lot of time, a lot of work, a lot of energy. And, you know, between this pricing model and using Skimmer together, it's completely changed that. Like I said earlier on today, like I'm excited for tonight. I can't wait for this evening. I'm going to come home and I'm going to do invoicing. I love it. And I don't know too many people who are that excited about invoicing, but it's because it's not hard. I'm making money, and, you know, I feel that my company is more efficient and that I'm really doing kind of what people want to do when you own a company. You want to be successful. You want to have that feeling. And so it's a huge game changer. It's a huge game changer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think we're just about done here. I'll just close out by saying we have upped our affiliate program rate. So if you refer a customer, sign up for our affiliate program, you get $150 for every person you refer. If there's something that you want to see from us, if you have any ideas about webinar topics or anything that you'd like to see us cover, shoot us an email at support@getskimmer.com. And we will add those to the list of topics. We like to bring you content that you are going to enjoy, that's useful, and that will help you save time and make more money.
Yep. And if you guys have any other, you know, questions, you can always reach out to me at my email. Shoot me a message and I'll get back to you. Just, you know, I'm in the field, so I'm not always going to respond super fast, but I'll definitely get back to you and help you out. I sent that to you in the chat.
Thank you again, Michael, for joining us today. Thank you to all of our active participants who joined us, and we'll see you on the next one.
Yep. Thanks.
I appreciate it. Thank you, guys.